What we utter is God's wisdom. Let's hope I have an ounce of that today with what I have to say to you. I'm John Miner. My wife Colleen down here in front, and I are the respect life directors for the diocese. And Jamie here is also, she's a member of our team that was fortunate enough to go to the World Meeting of Families last year. And what we've done is, around the diocese, we've been, as a team, going to different places and having get-togethers like this, and trying to spread some of the word of what we learned at these various workshops and things that we had down there. Of course, as most of you probably know, our Holy Father was there, and that was a very, very much a blessing on the whole organization. But there was a lot going on. There was a whole week of things that were going on. Speakers from throughout the world regarding topics that range widely, but always centered on family and what family is and what family means to the world and what family means to the church and to us as individuals. And so we all went to different workshops. Some of us crossed over in some sense, but we tried to get a good coverage of what was there to be said. There was a lot to be said. And there was a lot to be said by people who are right at the pinnacle of their expertise, whether it be in philosophy or theology or law or all different topics. But it was really a meeting of a lot of experts throughout the world. And when I say experts, I mean people who really know the church teaching, but also can translate it into something more understandable by people like myself who really, it's nice to have that translation into lay terms so that we can really absorb what they had to say. Now, my general thoughts on the meeting itself, I'd like to give you a quick glimpse of that. The meeting itself, like you said, was full of giants, to me giants in the Catholic world and in the world of the idea of families. One of them happened to be a man named Cardinal Sarah, and he's a cardinal from Africa who has he's garnered some attention, well, actually since the World Meeting of Families for different reasons. But Cardinal Sarah is a very wise man. He was our first keynote speaker, and one of the things that really caught me about what he was talking about was he was referring to the image of God, and he said at the core of the image of God lies relationship, and if we know about the Trinity, we bless ourselves with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit every time most of the times we pray. Now. That's what he's talking about when he's referring to the relationship of God. And we, as individuals, in our relationships with each other, are actually called to reflect those relationships in the Blessed Trinity. And that really struck me as a very powerful thought. It's not that it was novel to me. I'd heard this before in different ways, but for some reason at that moment it struck me as very important when it comes to things that are going on in the world and things that are going on with the family. Cardinal Sarah also referred to a warped concept of freedom that includes things in our culture now, like unmarried cohabitation, pseudo-marriage, some people call it same-sex marriage, divorce, remarriage, things that disrupt the family, that undermine what the family really is. And it's interesting that, as I say here, some of this sounds a little critical and harsh. It was interesting the way Cardinal Sarah put things. He was very much upfront and to the point, but he's such a gentle man that it was very easy to receive what he was saying. Another topic that ran through, well, actually, to me, the topic that kind of ran through the entire week was the concept of human dignity being at the core of every talk, of every message that was given, whether it was from the Pope on down. Human dignity was the key to everything. And none of what was said would make any sense without a correct concept of what human dignity was. That it's an innate thing within us. It's not something that we have because of our talents or because of our abilities, gifts, amount of money we have, our position in life, whether we're, CEO of a company or president of the United States or a teacher somewhere or somebody who cooks for people, who cleans for people in an area in a way that's somewhat hidden from society. Doesn't matter. The same human dignity runs throughout. Every single person has the same dignity. And if the things that we received were to be received properly, it could only be with that understanding of human dignity. The particular talk that I was kind of charged with absorbing and laying some groundwork on was one by a man named Robert George and an understudy. His name is Sharif Gurgis. They're both men of law, both lawyers, attorneys, but they're also very, very strong and well-informed Catholics. And they live their public life being informed by their Catholic faith. And their topic, specifically Sharif Gurgis, his topic was on public discourse regarding marriage. And, of course, world meeting families, marriage is a big topic throughout. But his specific thing that he was talking about was the confusion that we have in our culture right now regarding something called, the economy here called marriage equality. And that's, he wanted to make it clear that this is a misconception about the whole topic. Equality is something that exists within the church and outside of the church. The church does not treat anybody unequally. However, his point was that in order to understand this properly, we have to understand what marriage is. The one side is understanding the human dignity, which we have to accept and we have to apply to our lives. But the other side is to understand what marriage actually is, because our society has redefined what marriage is actually now. A lot of people think marriage is, you hear this all the time, has something to do with an emotional bond. Well, that's actually true. It does have something to do with an emotional bond, but it doesn't equal an emotional bond. And that's something that has to be kind of steeped into what we're talking about if we're going to project the right message to people. Robert George actually defined marriage. He had a very specific definition, and if you'll notice, he doesn't talk about the church, he doesn't talk about even God, but his definition fits right in with the Catholic understanding of marriage. He says, marriage is not just love, because we're all called to love each other. Marriage is not just sex, because it's possible for people to have sex with no love involved with that. Marriage is a comprehensive thing, and that was the important key word that he was talking about. It's comprehensive. And here's another thing important to understand. It's ordered to procreation and would be fulfilled by a married couple having children. Now, some might argue, well, I know married couples who can't have children. Or I know somebody who got married when they were older and they were no longer able to have children. His point isn't that people have to have children in order for it to be a marriage. His point is that it's ordered toward that end. And that's what's important to understand, that it would be fulfilled by having children. However, having children isn't integral to what it is. It's just that it's toward that end. It's kind of a philosophical concept, but it can make sense if you think about it. The reason for that is because the act that makes marital love, the marital act as the church calls it, is also the kind of act that makes new life. It doesn't always make new life, but it's the kind of act that does make new life. And it's the quality of the act. It's what the act is, not necessarily what it directly does. There's also a couple of things regarding the comprehensiveness of marriage that we found very important. It's not just in the dimensions of the partners, and it's not just in the range of goods that united them, which when they were talking about the order toward having children and having a family as such. It's an equally comprehensive commitment, which also goes back toward those two goods. What he says is that the comprehensive commitment deals with giving one's whole self for one's whole life. Those are things that are intrinsic to marriage. If it doesn't have those, then it is not marriage. And that's sometimes referred to as exclusivity, sometimes referred to as permanence regarding those two concepts. This is what he calls the conjugal view of marriage. And he was referring to the conjugal view and the revisionist view. Now I explained a little what the revisionist view is. If we understand what I was just talking about to be the conjugal view, the revisionist view would be anything outside of that. And I don't mean that it doesn't sometimes include one or more of those aspects of the conjugal view. But if anything is missing, then it's not a comprehensive view, and it fails that test of what the conjugal view of marriage is. Now, if our culture is altering the definition of marriage, and it's doing it. I say doing it. It's an ongoing process. It's done it and continues to do it. Our courts have done it. The Supreme Court has done it. And it continues to be done. One argument that comes forth quite often is, well, how does this affect you? You can hold your view. I can hold my view. And it doesn't affect you because, it's kind of a live and let live kind of situation. Their points that they brought up are important things for our whole society. How are we affected? And it's important to ask, how is society affected? Because it's not just because it might affect me or my family. It's because it affects society. When it affects the whole society, it affects me and my family. Point one was the law teaches. The law teaches and shapes culture. If the law changes to reflect that revisionist view of marriage, then that's going to teach people by virtue of how it affects and shapes culture. The culture shapes what we do, and that follows from the law teaching and affecting culture. Also, important to remember is that the revisionist view undermines all of the stabilizing effects of marriage, and marriage does have a lot of stabilizing effects in our society. When I'm talking here about these aspects of marriage, I'm referring to what marriage is. I'm not trying to say that every marriage always fulfills all these things and we're all perfect, because God literally knows we're not. I don't know a single perfect marriage. I've never seen one. I'd like to think mine is, but I know it isn't. So, it's not about the perfect marriage. And it's not even about an ideal that we can't really reach, because we shouldn't look at it that way. But there are stabilizing effects in a good marriage. Permanence is one of them. Permanence is lifelong. Exclusivity. I'm my wife's husband, my wife is my wife. Nobody else has that claim on either one of us. Monogamy is another one. That speaks to exclusivity as well. We see instances of some people who believe that polygamy, having many spouses, is what they believe is the way to go. But again, that undermines the stabilizing effects of marriage. The important thing for us, and as a church, this is critical. I know we see it in some of our pre-Cana programs and other aspects. And if any of you are involved in marriage preparation on any level, this is so important. When people enter into marriage, it's so important that they know what they are choosing. Because so often people don't really know. I would actually admit that at the time of our marriage, which was 30 years ago this year, there was probably some aspect of me not knowing exactly what I was choosing. But that doesn't null and void our marriage. But the more people know what exactly it is that they were choosing, the better it is for them, whether it heads them in the direction of saying, maybe I shouldn't be choosing this. Or at least it's an understanding of, okay, I know what I'm getting into and I'm ready for it. What they are choosing is not what the culture says it is, and that's plainly obvious now. The culture says marriage is maybe a legal joining of two people who love each other. Well, why are they legally joining? Because they love each other? I have friends that I love. I have children that I love. Am I married to them? No, it's a different thing. They talk about an exclusive commitment to somebody. I might have an exclusive commitment to somebody on another legal basis, but it doesn't make it a marriage. It's all these things tied together that make it marriage. And Robert George and Sherry Jurgis also joined with another man named Ryan Anderson. They wrote a book called What is Marriage? And so I'm condensing a lot of what's in that book. I haven't actually read the book yet. I've read some summaries. It's worth looking into because one of the things that this book does is that it takes this topic independent of our faith lives and it looks at it from a window in a way that we can secularly present it to people. Just a quick addition on this. They talk about unions. You've heard people talk about unions of this or that or other sort. Because a marital union is a union that is given to us by God, it's the only true earthly union out there. When God says the two shall become one, there is no other union that actually truly makes the two become one. And that's such a sacred thing that we have to hold as sacred. And it's so sacred that Jesus made a sacrament out of it. And it's something important to consider in all our ramifications here. Also, faith comes through the family, and that comes through the marriage. So we have to, if we're going to pass the faith on to our children, there are many ways to do it, but the most important way is through the family. Marriage also, final point. Marriage is not a private thing. It's not between me and my wife. It's not by any stretch between me and my wife. Marriage is, because it's a sacrament, is public in nature. The minute a couple becomes one in that union, their marriage is of public interest because the whole church is involved in it. Not a private thing. If anyone ever tries to tell you that, beg to differ with them because it's not, never has been private, and it should not be